بشنو از نی چون حکایت میکند، از جدایی شکایت میکند. کاز نیستن چون مرا ببریده اند، از نفیرم مرد و زن نالیده اند. Listen to the song of the reed in its weeping, for it tells the story of our separation. For since the day the reed was torn from its riverbank, in its sorrow is heard the cry of every man, of every woman. When Mahmud, king of Ghazni, conquered India, that was the day. That was the day that he conquered the world. But the day that King Mahmud, for the first time, looked upon a simple shepherd called Ayaz, that was the day. That was the day that the world conquered him. For in a world of guile and pretense, Ayaz had a common touch and a free and easy manner. In a world of malice and duplicity, Ayaz had a simple, kind heart, which welcomed everyone with the best of intentions. When the king spent more time with this shepherd called Ayaz, he found his simplicity, his kindness so disarming. It reminded him of his own old lonely heart filled with years of disappointment. And he was so taken with this shepherd that he brought this shepherd to his court and made him his favorite. And there was Ayaz in the court of the great king, in his fine clothes, day after day showered with gifts and honors by King Mahmud. And of course, the other courtiers did not fail to notice all the attention that was being showered on this new courtier called Ayaz. And this brought malice to their hearts. Behind Ayaz's back, they talked among themselves. Look who our king has chosen as his favorite, they said to themselves and each other. Look who the king has chosen as our favorite. Someone who sings out of tune, someone who doesn't even know all the rules of poetry, someone who has goat's milk still stained on his lips. And as their malice grew, they kept their distance from Ayaz. And then the day came that the king announced that there would be a banquet to celebrate the birthday of Ayaz. Of course, the courtiers couldn't even think of attending such an event. But the message was brought to them all too clearly that if they did not attend like the others, they would receive great disfavor from their king. And so out of fear of their king, the courtiers attended this banquet. And there they were, the king at the main table, and at his side was Ayaz. And as they sang and drank and caroused, the king did not avoid a single chance to look to his side and see his beloved Ayaz and look upon him so lovingly. And how it filled their hearts with jealousy when they saw this. And then in the middle of the banquet, the king ordered all the voices to be hushed, and he made this announcement as he turned to Ayaz. Ayaz, my beloved, he said to him, ever since you have come to my court, you have brought joy to it. You have brought a new spring. And in my gratitude today Tonight, in this banquet, ask anything, and I will not refuse it to you." Well, Ayaz turned to the king, and very shyly he looked to the floor, for he could not even bear to look up into the king's eyes, despite all the affection the king had for him. And he tried to speak through his shyness, saying this: "Your Majesty, Your Majesty, ever since I have arrived in your court, I have seen wonders. I have seen wonders that I did not think were possible. You have showered so many gifts on me. You have offered me so much that I did not even think I would receive in this world. And yet, alas, there is one thing I miss, one thing I long for. How I long for a room which no one could enter or leave but myself. A room which no one could see but me. A room of my own." Well, as soon as Ayaz spoke these words, at once the king commanded that a room be set aside in his palace, along the corridor leading to the west gate. And if that wasn't enough, he ordered a locksmith from India to create the most intricate lock so that no one would be able to enter into this room that was set aside for Ayaz. And once it was done, not a day passed when Ayaz entered that room and spent an hour there. And then he left. And he did not tell anyone, not even the king, what he did in that hour in his secret room. He would not say a word of this to anyone. The courtiers gathered among themselves once again, and their malice became gossip as they spoke in this way. "Do you see now? Look at this Ayaz going to his secret room, not even telling anyone, not even the king. Who knows what crime he is committing in there? Perhaps he is hoarding the king's own jewels. Are we going to stand by and see our king tricked by this upstart? Are we going to stand by and see our king be betrayed by the very person he has showered so much affection on?" And so they began to believe their own gossip. And they shared their gossip with the guards of the palace who were so loyal to the king. And when they heard the possibility that the king's own favorite Ayaz was betraying their king, they could not bear it. So they decided at once that they would make a plan one evening to make their way before that secret room of Ayaz, and discover for themselves what was hidden in it. And so the evening came. There were the courtiers, and beside them the guards of the palace. Now among the guards, there was one who had a previous life as a bandit and knew full well how to uncrack every lock. And he was the one set to work on that intricate lock created by that Indian locksmith. And his experience as a thief did not fail him in that moment, for he uncracked that lock. And for once that door was open to anyone. And so with one breath, all of them at once stormed into that room as the door swung open. And as they ran into the room, they cried out in rage. But when their voices silenced, they looked around to see what was in there. And what did they see? that the room was empty. The only thing there was a wooden bench, and draped over the wooden bench was a sheepskin coat, and leaning against the bench was a shepherd's crook. This was the simple attire of a shepherd, and this was all that Ayaz was hiding in this secret room. And then at that moment it came upon them. It came upon them, the great betrayal they had committed against Ayaz, who had never done anything wrong to them. And they were filled with shame. And the next day, they appeared before the king, all of them looking to the ground, standing as guilty before the golden throne of King Mahmud. And they explained everything that happened the night before. And all the time the king listened silently. And as one of them finished speaking, he said this: "So, Your Majesty, you have heard everything. You have heard the great crime we have committed against your own favorite. Now we wait for your sentence." But the king only looked at them and said this: "It is after all not I against whom you have committed this offense. It is against Ayaz. And so it will not be myself. It will be Ayaz, rather, who will pass sentence against you." And so at once Ayaz was summoned. And half understanding why, there he was standing before the guards and the courtiers, as it was explained to him what had happened the night before. But Ayaz only looked at all those men. He looked at them with sadness. And he turned to the king and he said, Your Majesty, after all, maybe I brought this on myself. For you see, ever since I have arrived at your court and seen all the wonders and riches, I started to forget where I came from, forget who I really was. And this filled me with such homesickness, such loneliness, forever forgetting who I was, that I wanted that secret room. I wanted that secret room to put in it the very possessions I had, the coat I had on my back, the crook I had in my hand, the only things I possessed before I entered your court. I wanted those things to be put into that secret room, so that every day I could enter that room and remember where I came from before I entered your glorious court, O King. But in making my request, I understand now, seeing these poor men, that it is after all not I that have suffered this homesickness. For don't you see these men before you suffer the same homesickness that I have suffered all along? And this bitter homesickness has made them do what they did the night before, for no other reason than this. And so I beg of you, Your Majesty, I beg of you to pardon these men, for they are already suffering. For they are already suffering from homesickness. And as Ayaz finished to speak, he saw the men beginning to weep, weeping as children who are leaving their homes for the first time, weeping as those suffering from homesickness. And so, after that, the men were released. And when their tears dried, never again did they bother Ayaz and his daily visits to his secret room. And every time the king asked where Ayaz was, and every time he was told that Ayaz at that moment was in his secret room, the king only shook his head with a sad smile and said this, "And may it be the same for each of us, and may it be the same for each of us. May each of us find our way. May each of us find our way to our own secret room. May each of us find our way back home." Beshno az nechon hikayat mikonad, az jodaya shekayat mikonad. Listen to the song of the reed in its weeping, for it tells the story of our separation.